Are we ready?
We are back.
Oh, fucking look at this, dude. In a
Hi,
studio,
my
this is
boy.
very exciting. I'm absolutely fantastic on this beautiful, crisp Saturday morning. How are you?
I could not be better.
Fantastic.
Honestly, I just could not be feeling freaking better right now. Honestly.
Absolutely love it. So today we're going to be talking about a very fascinating topic that is kind of relevant to every single one of us.
Love and relationships.
Love and relationships. And if you think about it, a lot
Sure.
of the time we spend our entire lives trying to reach those pinnacles, trying to reach that because that is the ultimate human experience at the end of the day.
Yes, no, the soul is actually after this highest feeling. If you think about it, you come into this world, and whatever's made us is made us with pure love. So we're born with pure love. So essentially why we're here is to experience the highest feeling of the soul, which is love. But, thinking about this podcast now, so over these past couple of weeks, me and Kai came to the realization that there are 3 universal laws. So the first one is fear. You attract what you fear, essentially. The first one was, actually, let me just double check that quickly, was thought is creative. So our first podcast was Where is Our Mind? So thought is creative.
Everything starts with a thought.
Exactly, and now it manifests into reality. Me and Kai, we thought of doing this podcast on Buckhoven, just overlooking the ocean one day, and we thought, should we get out a phone and maybe record some of our conversations? Little did we know, a month later, we'd be in a studio having our third episode with the cameras. Hello. And so the third one today is love is all there is. So Kai, please enlighten us. What is love?
What is love? As I already said, I think that love is the ultimate expression of being human. If you think about it, it's the one thing that we strive towards our entire lives. It's the purest emotion. If you think about it, humans are just pure love. That's all we really are at the end of the day. So, we can experience almost co-emotions with love. So we'll have simultaneous experiences, but no matter what you're experiencing, love is still there at the core. So if you're experiencing anger, you'll still have love in there. If you're experiencing fear, you're still going to have love deep in there because you're going to act out of anger, but out of love, or you're going to act out of fear, out of love. For example, if you work a job that you hate to support a family that you love, you're doing something that you hate out of love. So it's already like, taking a negative kind of emotion and applying that to love, because love is at the basis of it. So if you think about it, what we're really trying to achieve in these pure states of love where, you say, I'm so in love, what you're really trying to do is just get rid of the veil of all of the other kind of emotions covering over you. You just want to get rid of those so you can experience just love as it is and nothing else,
No, of course. But when I think of love as well, I think of it as an amalgamation of every other emotion that we could possibly feel.
Okay.
So it's actually the driver of the human experience is love. And interestingly enough, fear sponsors love and love sponsors fear. It's actually a perfect cycle, a sort of chain reaction. And how I know this is so often that we build things up in life. We love things and we destroy them and we create them again. And that is because there is such a thing as fear-based love or love-based fear, as you have just so nicely put together, aptly put together. So we think of love, if you could describe it as a color. Color is not the absence, the term color in terms of white. White is not the absence of color, it is merely the amalgamation of every other color. So if you could see love in the same light, love is actually an encapsulation of every single emotion that we could possibly feel as humans.
All amalgamated into one.
All amalgamated into one. So
That's fascinating.
So like the
and
white
that includes
color.
the negative ones as well.
Exactly. And then joy, truth, and love is actually all interchangeable. You'll find when you live in your own truth and you're joyous, you experience love. And when you are loving, you speak the truth and you encounter joy at the exact same time.
Yeah.
So those are 3 facets of love that makes it interchangeable, which is very interesting, I find.
Absolutely. I mean, just talking about love there, obviously when you are in love with another person, so I'm speaking purely about the, not necessarily romantic love, but the love between 2 people coming together. That could be the love between a mother and a child, obviously a boyfriend and a girlfriend, a husband and a wife. Even, teacher and a student, different forms of love exist in the world, and none of them are right, none of them are wrong. But what I really want to do is define what true love is in its essence. So true love is when I want for you what you want for you, not what I want for you, because then I'm serving out of my best interests. So when I want for you what you want for you, I have your best interest in heart, and that's really what true love is. When I want for you what I want for you, then it becomes me loving myself through you, if that makes sense.
No, exactly, because in order to actually have a relationship with someone else, you need to understand that still need to have a relationship with yourself. Because the self is essentially the driver of the human experience. So the self is essentially your spirit. It is after the love experience. But yourself is pure love. So in order to know what love is, you need to love yourself, because that is the driver of this human experience that we speak of. So we talk more about love. We talk about approaching relationships. How do you have this approach to relationships? So, love, it's a thought behind a thought. It's the main driver of the human experience.
The basis of all emotions, as I said earlier.
Yes.
There's not even any proof that love even exists, like we can describe similar observations that we experience when we experience the feeling of love, so we'll say, I had butterflies in my stomach, or no, I felt eternal, like the whole world was just like I was the whole world, or it's impossible to really describe exactly what love is just because of its eternalness, how it just goes on forever. There is no limit to love. There is no limit as to how you can express love to other people either. So, it's interesting because like I said, we can't prove that love is actually a thing, but we can agree that, we can observe similar things when we experience feelings of love, that we can say, okay, love is a human emotion, and that's all it really is at the end of the day, just biochemicals and electrical impulses flowing through our brain to give us this feeling of being in love.
No, exactly. And at least we know what fear is, because if you look at the divine dichotomy, which we spoke of in the previous podcast, everything in life has duality, and you need to know what one thing is in order to know what it isn't. But now, as we've expressed, love can be many emotions in one. But the root cause of any other sponsoring emotion, it either comes from love or fear. So a sponsoring emotion of fear would be anger or frustration. And then with love, you can have joy, you can have truth, as we've spoken of. So the both are interchangeable. And in order to know what love is, you also must know what it isn't.
Exactly.
So that brings us to our point. So now that we have spoken about what love is and that it's purely subjective, how do you know how you are being loving to another person? Like, what classifies as something doing loving? And I would say personally, it's having passion. So everything you do in life, if you love what you do, people will describe you as having a passion. And you instantly realize that the minute you start loving what you're doing, everything explodes into success. So us being here on this podcast, we love what we are doing. And I would like to think for our standards, it's becoming successful because we are just placing love on it. There's no sponsoring thought or emotion behind it.
Just here to have fun at the end of the day, exactly.
Have a
We might have to edit that out, but hey, we'll see how it goes.
No.
At the end of the day, we are here to have a time.
That's cool.
Philip, it is quite weird being on camera though. Like, I won't lie, but at the same time, I could say I love it. So far.
I do love it.
Yeah,
I mean, but and then you get someone that goes to McDonald's and ba-da-ba-da-ba.
Yeah, so I mean, in the world there exists all these different types of love. You can have, like I said earlier, the love between people. You can have love to an object, or like love a routine, or love a certain action. It's a vast spectrum of the things that we can love and give our love to. Because, like, if you think about it, all love really is what we want in our lives to help make us feel as comfortable as possible. And like, we'll get to that a little bit later on with relationships, where we speak about how these co-created spaces are made.
Just an approach why they fail and how to deal with that afterwards. Me and Kai, we've also had relationships of our own and many personal relationships, and the divine dichotomy comes in here because you think your personal relationships are separate, but they're all interconnected because you are the center of all your relationships to an extent where your relationships are actually intertwined. So I have a relationship with you, but my relationship with someone else does affect you, because although I don't have that specific relationship with you with that other person, my relationship with them affects my relationship with you. So that's the divine dichotomy once again.
In a little kind of way, which will therefore indirectly affect the relationship with me. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So we're all united and we are all one. And love, if you look at a child coming into this earth, you speak of eternal. You speak of love, you speak of truth, you speak of joy, you speak of fearlessness. And what a child brings to this earth is that pure, authentic power. And being an authentic self is when you are most connected to yourself. And yourself is pure, it is loving. I love Nelson Mandela's quote where he's like, he literally says, no person is taught to hate. No person is taught to not love. The only idea that we get that from is from society itself. We are taught not to love. We are born with this authentic power, and belief systems have been passed down where we feel that we got to give love conditionally. There has to be a condition for me to love you. And I couldn't think of anything further from the truth, a misconception, if you will.
I mean, if you look at kids, they're happy to, run around naked or like go hug strangers that they've never met before. And if you think about it, a lot of parents, if their kid sees a stranger there, the stranger maybe smiles and waves, the parents are going to be like, no, 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 stay away from him. He's a stranger. Like, you don't know what his intentions are. And it's interesting that we kind of conditioned like that from such a young age to make us be skeptical of other people, even when you can feel deep down this person's intentions are true. Like they're like,
pure.
you can feel if someone's intentions are bad, like for me at least personally, like I know for you as well, you can get that vibe, that sense, like, okay, like don't really trust them, do trust them, they mean well and everything. And then also with expressing love, like I've said probably for the third time now, that it's the highest expression of human emotion.
Of the
And
self.
that being said, if you're ever at a point where you're experiencing something other than love, where you're like co-experiencing another emotion with love simultaneously, as we always do, you'll kind of be left wanting to reach that highest state. Because I mean, a lot of people will say, like, the happiest moments of my life are, the day of my marriage, the day that I have kids, where it's like, very intense feelings of love coming towards you. And that's essentially what we're striving towards in the human experience, to get to the space of love with other people, especially, or, like love our careers, love our, like whatever. We're always striving to give out love, and in essence, we'd like to receive it as well.
No, of course. And what Kai has so beautifully orchestrated there for me to get onto this topic, once again, the divine dichotomy comes in. Because if you want to experience the highest of joys in life, you've got to experience the lowest of lows. You've got to go rock bottom if you want to go to your ceiling. And the thing is, there is no ceiling and there is no rock bottom. You always think there is.
So
but it's multi-layered.
Tell me about your rock bottom experience now that we're on the topic of
Sure.
this.
So that's what I was actually about to get to. So I would say about 10 months, 11 months ago, I was in my car driving back from my psychologist, having the full realization that the loss of a relationship, the loss of a loved one, came at the expense of me realizing that I had struggled with traumas of neglect throughout my whole life. Never feeling fulfilled enough, never loving myself enough, because I never received enough love as a child. So I always thought, I must exchange love. In order to get love, I must give love. And that is correct. You can give love to receive love, but you shouldn't give it with the expectation of receiving it back. Yeah. And that's what we'll talk about when we're approaching relationships. So I was in my car listening to Keep Bleeding in Love, and I was having a fat cry, looking at the seagulls going, ah! And I was like, you know what? I don't feel free like you today. I feel stuck here, and I'm feeling sad, and my heart's broken, and I hate it, and I felt it. I felt that pain. And you can love someone so much that you feel the pain. And it all came to a point of realization where I'd lost my identity in this relationship. And it was, the most painful thing was knowing that I'd lost a part of myself in this relationship. I went into the relationship knowing from the beginning that we probably aren't compatible, but my whole experience, I wanted the experience. A lot of my friends have had the experience, and I saw society paints relationships in such a picture, in such a way. Everything we see in the movies, just the information that we get, we place love on this pedestal, and we conceptualize it in such a way that it completely distorts what it is. We're always chasing this image of what love is, but never really knowing how to feel it in the moment. So after the breakup, I really realized like I'd lost a portion of myself, and that's the thing that broke my heart the most. But that's also what sent me to the rock bottom, and what has helped me build myself up again. And now I've realized that through breaking down belief systems and structures, I have more of a platform now, because my platform now ends where the rubble ended. And now I can go from the rubble upwards. And I will continue doing that. And there's no ways I'm not going to not feel it again. I will feel heartbreak again in this life. I am going to lose loved ones. But the thing is, going forward, I know that it's going to shape me, and that it's going to be spiritual growth that gets me through them. And the only way to transcend pain is to experience pain. So you must befriend the pain that comes with ending relationships. But we'll get more into that later. So yeah, that's my personal experience. It's been tough. It was very difficult. It's still multi-layered. I still feel triggers of trauma. It doesn't just go within a day. Time's the greatest healer. But instead of looking at it now as a curse, I look at it back as a blessing, that people are sent to you in this life as messengers to shape you, to put you on a destined path. You don't know it at the time, but this universe works in such a way that is so magnificent that it's put us all here. This nature that's created everything, this force, it knows your life. It knows which direction that you must take for personal greatness. You may not know it. Your wants and needs don't meet the logic of the universe, and that's what I had to accept. Coming back to you, what personal experiences have you had?
So before I delve into my personal little anecdote, I'd like to share a different story. I know I've said it to you a few times about the old farmer working in the field. So one day, a wild horse ends up on the farmer's farm, and he's like, okay, there's a horse, and the neighbors come by, and they're like, oh, you've got a horse, cool, bro. And he's like, yeah, maybe, like, could be good, could be bad. Next day, the farmer's son, is riding the horse, and he falls off, he breaks his arm, and the neighbors come around, they're like, oh, dude, like, your son broke his arm, that's unfortunate. And the farmer's like, yeah, maybe. And then the next day, the army comes around looking for young men to go fight in the army, and the son can't go fight in the army because his arm's broken. The neighbors come by again, and they're like, oh, fantastic, your son doesn't have to go fight in the army, you must be so relieved. And the farmer said, yeah, maybe. So basically what the moral of the story is that you can't judge a present situation for what it is, because you have absolutely no idea in the moment what purpose this instance will serve in the bigger picture. Which leads me on to talking about my personal rock bottom after I broke up.
Give us the sauce, bro.
Give us the sauce. I will
the
give you the
sauce.
sauce, bro. Nando's peri peri, some Steers mayo. What do you want?
Sting me. I want to hear the sting.
Some stinging stuff. Okay. Some sriracha maybe. So I ended the relationship one night. This was in February this year, and driving home, I was like, yeah, like, I mean, I'm bleak, but not that bleak. And then I went to go watch a soccer game at a friend's house, and he kind of, gave his 2 cents, and got home, and then I was like, yo, okay, I'm feeling a little bit sad now. And then I like looked at this book that she'd given me for our 1 year anniversary, and then, oh my word, the tears started rolling. I was just lying there. I was crying probably for about an hour and a half, and it was the first time and only time in my life that I've had a panic attack. I was like lying there, I was like hyperventilating fully, like it was a really scary experience, and then at one point I went downstairs just to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror, I was like, this is pathetic, like, and then I just, in that moment, an amalgamation of years worth of shit behavior, like moments coming up where I'd hurt her, and like this had obviously been a moment which had hurt her. I was really worried that she would, like, I was scared that
it resurfaces. It brings everything to the table. Just all these emotions that have accumulated. It all starts breaking. Your structures that you've placed to contain
all came out
them.
at once. So like I collapsed in a sorry heap on the bathroom floor. I was lying there like curled up in a ball, like.
That is hilarious.
And then after a while I was like, wait, why am I actually doing this? This is pathetic. And in that moment that I was lying there on the cold tiles, I was like, this is rock fucking bottom. I was like, no man, okay, like at least it cannot get worse from here. I can't get to a more pathetic state of life where I'm lying on the floor, low-key hoping that my parents will hear me crying and come pick me up off the floor. Pathetic.
I feel like we should have gone, like, looked in the mirror and done like a Dwayne the Rock Johnson, like, I am rock bottom.
And like it's understandable why it was such a traumatic experience. It is traumatic breaking up with someone or being broken up with.
You're losing
if you think
someone.
about it, yeah. So you can define a relationship as kind of a co-created space between two people, and in that space you can like create a very comfortable space where you can fully express yourselves. I don't know if you want to touch onto relationships before I get more into my bigger points about it, but
I just feel like our whole approach to a relationship needs to be redefined.
I mean, getting into the relationship.
Exactly. I think our approach, I think a lot of people, we don't ask two very valid questions in the relationship before we get into one. Is, who am I, first of all, and who do I want to be in relation to this person? What you said earlier, which you touched on, I want to bring out the best in someone. I want to see them realize their dreams. So often what leads to bitterness is neglection of self. You get into a relationship and you start worrying about this other person, what they're thinking, what they're expecting. The picture of you becomes blurred. The roles that have been assigned don't get fulfilled. Leads to disappointment, anger builds, resentment builds. And this is because the whole relationship wasn't defined properly at the beginning. So what I like to think of a relationship nowadays is, if you break that word up into relation and ship, you should see it as a vessel taking you somewhere in relation to someone else. It should be taking you from A to B. And often what we find is people get stuck on the ship together, and then it starts to stagnate. Friends become the same friends, hobbies become the same hobbies. You start losing interest in what you used to do beforehand. You start losing me time. And a lot of people neglect the self. They think, I need fulfillment. I need someone to give me love. And the two biggest fears that people have going into a relationship is, when I say I love you, we fear that we won't get it back. And when someone says I do love you, we fear that we will lose it. So now what we have is fear-based love. And that manifests into other sponsoring thoughts and emotions that start crippling the relationship. It leads to arguments, it leads to disagreements. And you should see it as your responsibility, which I also like to split up as a response, an ability to respond to another person in the relationship. But don't respond to the other person. Respond to yourself. Your intuition is your witness. It knows when you're betraying it. Your witness knows what the truth is. And when you are betraying yourself to satisfy someone else's needs, you are betraying yourself. So you start neglecting yourself. You start worrying too much about this other person. That's a common misconception in relationships. You're not there to worry about the other person. You're not there to make them feel happy, because you need to make yourself feel happy to make them feel happy. It's a chain reaction. So once again, I think responsibility, responding ability. And now when you're having arguments, it's a reaction. But what is that? It's reenacting. It's reactivating hurt and feelings of emotional poison that you have been sharing between both of you. So what I would suggest is, when you're having a conversation that's not comfortable or avoidant, and you're starting to name call one another, leave the emotional poison with that person. Let them deal with it. It is their emotional poison. They are in control of their feelings. They should be in control of their feelings. It's not your responsibility. That's what I would say approaching a relationship. Change your conception of what a relationship is, which you said so nicely yesterday, is when you have realization of the self, you realize that a relationship is merely just a creation tool that can help you create yourself into who you are really supposed to be. Woof!
Exactly, dude. I mean, that leads on really nicely to my first point about relationships, and like I touched very briefly on it before you started your little chat now, which was some fantastic points, by the way. Like my mind was going there, like,
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Fantastic.
But it's the truth.
It is the truth.
And it speaks to us.
What relationships are, like I said, it's a space of co-growth, and essentially, if you think about it, what a relationship is just a space where you can be your pure self. So it leads back to yourself at the end of the day. You need to love yourself and learn how to love yourself before you can give the love to other people. Because if you don't even know how to love yourself, how can you expect to know how to love somebody else? You physically, mentally, emotionally don't have the capacity to be able to do that until you can say, I love myself. Honestly. And I think, like for me at least, it wasn't until quite recently where I could honestly say, Kai, I love you, Like, I watched this TED Talk a while ago, and they said, like, you should wake up every morning and say, my name, I love you. So, Kai, I love you. Like, I've done it about twice, it does feel a little bit weird, to be honest.
No, of course.
But, and essentially, like, when we get into these super comfortable spaces, we can express our true selves, and we can experience someone else, or observe someone else expressing their true selves, and that will obviously teach us a lot about what's inside us and what's inside other people, When you get to that level of intimacy with someone else, you just kind of co-create an energy field almost, and as you said to me, I think it was yesterday, it creates like a segment in your brain almost dedicated.
The frontal lobe.
Yeah.
Only starts developing between the age of 22 for women and 24 for men. And that is almost like your frontal lobe is having an EQ, if you want to call that, like an emotional intelligence. And that only comes being intimate with someone. But you got to be intimate with yourself. You got to have conversations with yourself. Talk to yourself in the mornings. I love you. How are you feeling? Write it down. You can't neglect the self. You are yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I think the most important thing, the first step to self-love at least, is self-acceptance. So you need to accept your flaws. First you learn to accept the flaws, then you start to learn to love the flaws. Because, at the end of the day, the only thing that's keeping you from being your best version of yourself is your perceived flaws. So you're like, oh no, this is my flaw, that's my flaw. I can't achieve my goal because of these flaws. But the moment you look at these flaws, you're like, okay, I accept these flaws. And then a little while later, you'll learn how to love these flaws. And then you'll learn how to use those flaws to your advantage. And it'll create a more well-defined person, because you're like, okay, I know what my strengths are. I know what my weaknesses are. I know how to use them both to my advantage. And essentially, like, when you get to that level of self-acceptance, you can start doing or creating self-growth. As, a lot of people, we can observe in a lot of different people. And it's fantastic seeing this self-growth. It's like nothing really gives me greater joy than seeing in someone else like a bit of self-realization, realizing like I'm a magnificent person. I am capable of so much in this life. It's not about.
We are so magnificent.
But the thing is, we don't think that. We don't believe it. We must start believing we are the absolute bee's knees. We are the best flipping thing in this world.
We are the best things in sliced bread,
yeah,
my friend.
yeah.
We really are.
And the thing is, like,
what's more perfect than a human being? Me here talking to you, conversing with you, speaking about things. We have a consciousness. We have an awareness. We are here for a reason, and that is to become who we are meant to be, who we truly are. Be a messenger of truth in your life. You are the truth. Be that authentic power.
Because you know what the truth is deep down. Always.
You always do.
know,
And
like,
it's
just
uncovering
in
it, and
your
it's
head,
going
the gut
back.
feeling.
And growing up, we've been given conditional love from our parents. We don't get unconditional love from the world. You get scolded. You know, you get put down by others. You get lifted up when you get appraisal, when you do something good or when you do something bad. So you bring this conditional love into your relationship. You conditionally love the other person. You don't love them unconditionally. And that sets it up for failure. And the biggest flaw with why people's relationships fail is the intentions at the outset. They come in for fulfillment. They come in for an exchange of love. I give you love, you give me in return. That's not how it works. If anything, you want to help them realize who they really are. The fragrance attaches to the hand that gives it, in terms of a rose. What I give to you, I give to myself. Because seeing you realize your best self helps me realize my best self. So when you come into the relationship, your intention shouldn't be, oh, ego boost. Oh, my mates think I'll be cool.
Yeah.
It's not about that. You're setting yourself up for failure, as myself and Kai have done. And when you start getting to a level of mastery, when you start understanding who you are
Not
and
that we're
what you want,
masters by any means.
we are nowhere near masters. No, we honestly aren't. It takes your whole lifetime to get there, but you start noticing what clothes fit and what don't. So clothes, metaphor for people, for a metaphor for, yes, this person's interests align with mine. They can help me bring out my best version of myself. So we bring in this conditional love, and we think we are so much less than what we actually are. We think the summation of two parts makes us whole. We are whole already. You are whole. You are holy, which is whole. And you come into that relationship and you are 100%. And when you love yourself 100%, you start realizing when someone gives you love that isn't 100%. And then you know this person doesn't love themselves 100%. They're not fully in love with who they are. And getting to the stage of self-acceptance, it takes so much work. I'm still not at 100%.
Lots of work.
It will take years before I fully accept myself. But I'm at least aware of it now. And I'm at least on this path of this process of confronting my feelings, confronting behavioral patterns, so that I know going forward I won't bring it into a relationship again. I've redefined it. And I've seen now as well with life is like a meandering river. You've got to have the lows, you've got to have the ups and the downs, the lefts and the rights, and it's all part of the beauty of the process. You wouldn't know what love is if you didn't know what fear was. That's why they both sponsor one another, and that's what makes it so beautiful, this wide spectrum of how we can approach relationships and being in relation to someone else. It's just merely, how am I in relation to you? That's really it. How can I express myself in relation to you? I'm not going to take on what you speak about me. If someone speaks lies about you in a relationship, girlfriend or boyfriend, if they say, yeah, you're this and you're that, and you have a strong perception of who and what you are, you won't believe those lies. You won't take them personally, and your relationship will flourish because you'll be honest, you'll be truthful. And communication, honesty, and truth is what sets up the platform for a strong relationship going forward. Always speaking, always being impeccable with your word. And that's what I believe makes a relationship whole and strong.
The outside in.